Madam CG, Vanakkam, Shalom, Shanatova Umituka.
Shalom and thank you. Shana Tova to you and all the viewers as well.
Madam CG, Rosh Hashanah is symbolically a moonless, dark period when pivotal things have happened throughout your Jewish history. Looks like we are at a very pivotal moment in the Middle Eastern history. Israel has come under attack from Iran. You have been known as a very resilient society, but how are the Israelis coping up during these turbulent times?
So first of all, thank you for your best wishes on the Jewish New Year that we're celebrating these days. I think the Jewish New Year is a symbolic day to show how each year we start new and we're always resilient and we always start a fresh start, ready for any challenges that we have in front of us. The people in Israel are concerned about the situation. Nobody enjoys being attacked by ballistic missiles indiscriminately. I was on the phone with my daughter. My daughter is 19 years old. I left her in Israel when I came here for my position as CG in Bangalore, and it's not easy for a 19-year-old to be alone in Israel while these things are happening. I was on the phone with her while the attacks were taking place, and it was obvious that it was uncomfortable and not a nice situation to be in. Even though I was here and I didn't feel it, but being on the phone with my daughter and feeling it with her, I could feel how difficult this is. I'm not sure when people hear the news how much they actually understand how it affects people, how hard it can be to actually live through this. But I'm saying this, and I'm also saying at the same breath that Israeli society is very resilient. We all know that Israel is there for a reason. Israel is there for the Jewish people to protect us, to have a safe place in the world after years of very hard times throughout history and very dark periods throughout history. And Israel now is there to protect us. So even though we're going through hard times, we know that we have a strong army. We know that we have a country to count on to defend us, and that's how we feel. Even in difficult times, we know that it'll be okay. We know that we will thrive again. And Rosh Hashanah is symbolic of that. Our New Year is symbolic of that. And I think that's the feeling now in Israel.
Madam CG, you've vowed to retaliate against the attack you faced earlier this week. But the question is, will Israel's response, retaliation, be proportionate? There is a global concern that a disproportionate reaction from Israel could lead to a cycle of violence and a broader regional conflict.
The whole concept of proportionate is very strange to me. I don't even know what that means. I'm not being cynical about it. I don't understand what proportionate reaction means. Israel has to defend itself. Okay, so Israel has an obligation to defend its people and to make sure that the Israeli citizens are safe. And Israel has to do whatever it has to do for that to happen. And that will be the response. That's the way we think. That's what guides the Israeli government is the best option for the people of Israel, and that's what's going to guide the response to the attack we saw from Iran.
But the concept of proportionality is a key mandatory principle according to the international law of armed conflicts. You're bound to follow by that.
Yes, but again, Israel's response is always guided by our need to protect the Israeli citizens. Israel tries to avoid hurting civilians in every conflict that it has. Israel's aim is to eliminate terrorists. Israel has no problem with the citizens of Iran. Israel wants the citizens of Iran to strive. We've seen protests in Iran throughout the years against a very horrible Islamic regime that they're under. Israel is against that very extreme Islamic regime that vows time and time again to destroy Israel. So Israel's response is against that regime. Israel has no problem with the Iranian people and hopes the Iranian people will have a better life as well in the future.
But the number of deaths that we have seen in Gaza in the last 1 year puts a blot on your track record.
I don't think so, because I think that first of all, the numbers that we see, we can't rely always on the sources that come out of Gaza. A lot of things are even if there are some, the numbers are high. Many of them are terrorists and belong to Hamas and other terrorist groups within Gaza. And again, Israel tries as much as it can not to hurt civilian population, but we have to remember that we're dealing with a terrorist organization, with Hamas. That's a terrorist organization that's been fueled by Iran for the past year, since 2007, when it got into power in Gaza, and its sole aim is to destroy Israel, and it uses its own people as human shields. So when they fire from within schools, they fire from within hospitals, they're putting their own people at risk. And this kind of thing should be stopped by the international community. It's terrible that this exists, that terror organizations are able and allowed to use their own people as human shields. I find it tragic, and I find it tragic for the people of Gaza as well.
Some assessments suggest that Israel might target Iran's nuclear facilities, and even the US has expressed caution on this matter. How would you address the global concerns on this issue?
Because I'm not part of these conversations, and I know that the leaders who are doing this, I have faith in my government and the people in the government to make the decisions that are most correct for the Israeli needs and the Israeli citizens' safety. So I can't comment because I don't know much more than that.
Even the US president has expressed concern on this matter.
Yes, I've heard.
What role do you expect India to play, given that it maintains very strong relations with both Iran and Israel?
India is a very close ally of Israel, and the support from India has always been important to us, and we hope to keep having good and close relations with the international community, India as well as a close ally of Israel.
India has a substantial economic interest in your region and also in Iran. In the event of an escalation, India's energy security could be very severely impacted. What message would you like to convey to the Indians who are very concerned that Israel's military actions could contribute to a global economic challenge and even affecting the prices of the food on their dining table?
And I think that putting pressure on countries who support terror, on countries like Iran, who invest in terrorist countries, who invest in Hamas, invest in Hezbollah, invest in the Houthis, who are causing turbulence in the Middle East. That's their purpose. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to they're denying Israel's right to exist. They're fueling terrorist organizations. Once that stops, and the international community can do more to put pressure on Iran to stop this behavior, then things will be a lot easier for everybody, and things can calm down, and there'll be much more security in the world. Iran is a power that creates havoc in the region and havoc in the world. And stopping Iran, stopping the horrible regime that leads Iran, would make the world a much better place.
Do you think India has done its part in this department?
I think India does what it needs to do, and I don't interfere in Indian politics.
Madam CG, what steps has Israel taken to ensure the safety of Indian citizens in Israel in the eventuality of escalation of this conflict?
So Israel has developed very complex defense systems, be it the Iron Dome or the Chetz or Kela David, which are the three main systems that were developed in the past years, because Israel puts a very high importance on defending its citizens and people living in Israel. Just as Iran has missiles have attacked Israelis or people living in Israel indiscriminately, these systems defend indiscriminately. So Indians living in Israel and other nationalities are just as safe as any Israeli living in Israel. They also have access to safe rooms wherever they are, and they're treated exactly the same.
Madam CG, people of India might be naturally concerned about the kith and kin living in Israel. Can you elaborate more about the efficacy and the efficiency of your air defense systems and your safety rooms and so on?
Yeah, so I don't know the physics. Unfortunately, I don't have enough background in physics to explain the different systems of the Iron Dome and other systems like it. Exactly. I do know, though, that they can deal with a very high percentage of missiles coming from different ranges and different types of missiles. And we've seen this in the past attacks where there have been very few hits in comparison to what's been aimed at Israel. So I don't know how to explain exactly the procedures of that, but I do know that they're very effective. In terms of the safe room, so every house basically has either a room that's a safe room that you can go into once you hear the sirens, or if it's older buildings, then there's either there's underground right near the building or right underneath the building. There are safe rooms that you can run down into. So everybody has access to these kind of safe rooms, and that's why people feel safe. And I think we've heard our Prime Minister Netanyahu say that the combination of the Iron Dome and other systems like it, together with the behavior of the public who listen to the instructions and stayed in the safe rooms, prevented any kind of larger casualties. Although one person was killed in this attack, actually a Palestinian from Gaza who was in Israel at the time was killed, but he was the only person, and luckily no further injuries or no further deaths were recorded.
That speaks volumes about the efficacy of your air defense systems. And the other concern is over the widening of this escalation. Even your Arab neighbors, who otherwise come to your rescue in the eventuality of an Iranian attack, accused you of trying to widen this war, widen this to a regional conflict.
I think it's a ridiculous claim, because we didn't start we didn't start anything. We were living our lives on October 7th. Like I said, Hamas entered unprovoked, entered villages, killed people, burnt people, kidnapped people. I don't think you understand it's hard to you don't understand, because it's hard to understand if you weren't there. And I luckily I wasn't there in the south at the time. I was in my own safe room in my house in Jerusalem. But when my friends start texting me that there are terrorists outside of their house shooting at them, and that their house is on fire, luckily my friends survived. But the brother of one of my friends, his family was burnt alive. He and his wife and his 3 children were burnt alive. And you see this as it's happening, and this has happened unprovoked. On a Saturday morning, you wake up and you see that your whole world is turned around, that there's no one else you can count on. And the next day, unprovoked, Hezbollah starts firing rockets from the north. And a little bit further on, Houthis from Yemen start firing rockets at Israel. And then Iran starts firing rockets at Israel. So to say that Israel is trying to widen the conflict, Israel didn't start any conflict. Israel is trying to defend itself and to live quietly and to maintain peace, and would prefer much to do it in diplomatic ways. But unfortunately, the terrorist groups that we're dealing with don't allow that. But if we could solve it diplomatically, we would be happy to.
Is it correct to say that you are facing conflict on 7 fronts?
7 fronts. I would say we're facing a problem that's called Iran. And Iran is financing and perpetuating different fronts, basically mainly in Hamas in Gaza, and Hezbollah in the north, and the Houthis as well. And of course, there's a lot. There are also Hamas activists in Judea and Samaria, so that also could pose a threat. And yes, so those are the threats. But I think the main threat and the head of the snake, as we call it, is Iran. And Iran is basically using all the proxies that it can, manipulating all the area in order to achieve its target of eliminating Israel. And of course, Israel will never, ever let that happen. So we have to deal with whatever it is to make sure that doesn't happen.
Things have changed dramatically in your north. Hezbollah has been weakened with almost the top 20 people, including the head Nasrallah, being eliminated by Israel. How has this altered the strategic balance in your region?
I think that it affects not only Israel. First of all, it's a good thing that Hezbollah is weakened, and hopefully, if it were, to open it, hopefully the hope is to eliminate it, or to eliminate the threat, disarm Hezbollah and move them further north of the Litani River, implementing UN Resolution 1701. So that would be the main aim. And I think, remember that not only Israelis were affected and killed by Nasrallah and Hezbollah, we're talking about American citizens who were killed, French citizens who were killed, and even other Muslim Sunnis who were killed during the troubles in Syria. So there were many people who are affected, and I think Lebanese citizens also, many of them would be very happy to see Hezbollah disarmed and losing its power, because Hezbollah, again, instead of letting Lebanese citizens thrive, they again try to take all the attention and try and direct it at hate at Israel. Instead of building something good, they use everything that they can to target Israel. And it's a shame, because Lebanon could thrive, Gaza could have thrived if only there was no hate towards Israel and the acceptance of Israel. That's the key.
Madam CG, correct me if I'm wrong. On your northern front, it seems that your primary goal is to push Hezbollah further back to the north of the Litani River, as you said, to implement the UN Resolution 1701, primarily to wipe off Hezbollah of your northern communities. Is that your end goal? Some people allege that your goal is to Garb territories from Lebanon.
No,
We
our
have
goal.
territorial ambitions in Lebanon.
We have no territorial ambitions in Lebanon. We want to clear the threat, because remember, Hezbollah, what it did was it took weapons and hid it inside of people's homes. Okay, they went over to people, usually people who are poorer, who need help, and it would suggest to put to in order to financially help them to hide weapons or to hide missiles within their homes. And then, so they created a situation where they were, again, knowingly putting their own civilians in danger. So Israel has to make sure that this is cleared and can't happen again. So once the area is clear, Israel has no interest in Lebanon. We have our own country, and we're happy with our country, and we just want it to be safe. And if it means that we have to go in to make it safe, then that's what we'll do. But the end game, the end goal, is to keep Israel safe.
I understand your goals, but the concern is over the collateral damages your operations have caused. Look at the hundreds of civilians who have been killed in the operation in the last 1.5 week. But also in Gaza, it's disproportionate to the number of killings that Hamas caused on your southern communities. I mean, you might dispute the question of.
So what do you suggest? You suggest that we kill exactly the same number when we try to defend? We tried to kill no civilian. Is it proportionate to kill any civilian? No civilians are ever been targeted by Israel. No innocent civilians are ever targeted by Israel.
Look at the numbers. These are
The
huge
numbers,
numbers.
again,
You might dispute,
if you have
there might be combatants, but the numbers are huge. It's
yes, but you have to
disproportionate the
speak to,
suffering that
if
you've
you want to get
endured.
answers for that, you should speak to Hamas and ask them, why are you using your civilians as human shields? Why are you firing from schools? Why are you firing from hospitals? Why are you firing at all? Why have you not? I mean, Israel exited Gaza in 2005. Okay, in 2007, Hamas in democratic elections took over the Gaza Strip and literally threw out the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, literally threw them. You can see pictures of them being thrown from the roof physically, threw them out physically, killed Palestinian Authority people, and took over Gaza, that Israel, which I remind you, Israel had exited in 2005. There could have been another outcome. A lot of people were willing to invest in Gaza at the time because there's a lot of sympathy to the Palestinian cause, and they could have used that money to build another Singapore, to make it a beautiful place. It's a small place. They could have created a heaven there. They could have built schools. They could have been parks. They could have built zoos. They could have built amusement parks for children. But they decided to take all that money and invest it in terror infrastructure because their main goal is to ruin Israel. That's the goal. They don't want Palestine. They don't want their citizens to thrive. They don't care about them thriving. Killing Israelis is more important to them. And we have to defend it. So we're dealing with an enemy that I think nobody really can imagine. There's no way for a normal person to understand the logic of this horrible enemy. And I think that's why people are thinking about disproportionality or things like that, because they don't realize what the Hamas is capable of doing to its own people. And I repeat, Israel will never, ever target civilians on purpose, ever.
It's been around a year. We are just merely days away from the first anniversary of the October 7th massacre. But what is your end game in Gaza?
Our end game is Gaza, is to stop the Hamas, to disarm the Hamas, okay, and to make sure that Israel is safe. But that's just true for every border. If you can ask me about Hezbollah, you can ask me about Hamas, you can ask me about all the borders. Israel's purpose is to keep its citizens safe and to live quietly. That's what we want, okay? And we want our hostages home. We want our hostages home as soon as possible. And until we know that Israeli citizens are safe and that the hostages are home, we can't stop. Once we know hostages are home and the borders are safe, then we can talk about stopping.
There are voices even in the West, even in the United States, that blames your government for having no deal to bring hostages back home.
Again, the protests against Israel are ridiculous. We weren't the one who went and kidnapped the people. You should target the kidnappers. It's a very easy situation. You kidnap people, bring them home. What other thing do we talk about? You take people, bring them home, and then we can talk further. You went into their villages, you killed their families. The people who are kidnapped, many of their families have been murdered. You mostly hear about people who are kidnapped, but the stories that you hear from the families, and I've been with families. When I was in Israel, Before I came here to this current position, I used to go with the hostage families to places around the world to talk about their cause. And when you meet them, when you spend time with them, you can't believe the stories that they tell you. Their loved ones are kidnapped. They had spent hours in safe rooms when they're terrorists outside their own homes. Some of their families also killed. And then things that you can't imagine. Terrorists came into their house and took the people from their homes. Bring them home. That's it. There's nothing else to discuss. Bring them home.
Madam, your political government is accused of torpedoing a deal that could bring these people home.
The government has many, the Israeli government has many considerations. It doesn't, and one of its aims is to bring the people home, but it also has aims to keep Israel safe, and it has to make decisions that take all of this into account. But I think the responsibility of bringing the hostages home lies on the terrorists who took them, not on anybody else.
What is your message to the Indian Prime Minister, the Indian government, and the people of this country who watch the developments in your region with utmost concern?
I want to say that, again, India and Israel are great allies. Support of India is an important thing to us. And I have to tell you that since I came to India, I've met some wonderful people here. And I'm really impressed with the level of caring and complex thinking, because the situation in Israel is not a simple situation. Understanding the political situation, why Israel is doing what it's doing, why there have been so many people hurt, is something that you have to really stop and think about and take time to read the history to understand. And what I've seen from Indian people so far here, at least the people that I'm meeting, are people who care enough to actually study this, to look more in depth into the situation and to understand it. And the people who do that understand Israel and understand what Israel's doing. And that I appreciate very much. And I want to say thank you to these people. And I wish all people, citizens of India and citizens of the world, would take the time, as they do, to understand more in depth the situation and to realize what's going on in the situation. It's very complex and not a one-liner that's easy to identify with.
Madam CG, wishing your country well and a very happy new year. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you.
Welcome.
Bye. Bye.